So, I changed quite a bit in my presentation, so therefore I have my computer with me. Yes, in order to react to the previous topics, but I hope that it is going to still be coherent. So, this is already the second slide. On the first slide, the title is mentioned, what never was, but might yet have been, which is a quote, thoughts on the virtual condition on the basis of the project Beyond Matter. So first of all, I would like to introduce and explain the different parts of the title. I will start with Beyond Matter, and it is a project that ran from 2019 to 23, which puts a specific emphasis on spatial aspects in art production, curating, and mediation through numerous activities and formats in order to explore a plurality of solutions and options that are emerging hand in hand with the development of computation. In this sense, practice-based research within the museum context is understood as being a process in which the development and creation of museum experiences, their evaluation alongside the participation of audiences, as well as the advancement of best practices for museum professionals who are being increasingly called upon to apply digital tools. And here you can see the partners. Sorry, would it be possible to see what is on the screen? So the activities taking place within the framework of Beyond Matter include the digital revival of selected past landmark exhibitions, as mentioned, art and archival exhibitions, conferences, artist residency programs, an online platform, and accompanying publications. In attempting to describe the virtual condition, the project probes the ways in which physical and digital space are interdependent. Moreover, Beyond Matter seeks to inhabit computer-generated space as a sphere of assembly. More specifically, as a platform for exchange to the contemplation and mediation of art without approaching it as a virtual copy, a depiction or digital twin of actual spaces. Yeah, Annetta has already mentioned a few of the partners. Yeah, okay. So, but just once more, so as mentioned, the Center for Art and Media, the ZCAM, is leading the project and working together with the Centre Pompidou Paris, the Tallinn Art Hall, the Tirana Art Lab, the Ludwig Museum Budapest, and the Aalto University. Today I will mention a few examples, a few sub-projects we've been working on in the past 4 years, and together with the Centre Pompidou mainly and the Ludwig Museum Budapest with the help of the Aalto University. So the next part of the title of this talk is the virtual condition. So it might need an explanation what we mean in this particular context when we say virtual condition. We at least define this together with the partners as a current tendency in cultural spheres toward the interdependence of physical and digital spaces, as well as the coexistence of multiple exhibition temporalities for arts mediation and reception. The virtual condition relates to and results from a dynamic genealogy of culture-related general conditions, such as Jean-François Lyotard's postmodern condition for 79, in which the meta-narratives that were a quintessential feature of modernism had become generally untenable. The post-medium condition, described 2 decades later by Rosalind Krauss in 1999, or Peter Weibel's post-media condition from 2012, as new technologies and telecommunications infiltrating the arts. It overlaps with various other contemporary conditions, such as the digital condition identified by Felix Stalder in 2010, the planetary condition by Yukui, 21, and the curatorial condition by Beatrice von Bismarck in 2022. If the postmodern condition was a crisis of narratives, as Jean-François Lyotard put it, then the virtual condition reveals a crisis of dichotomies. Its analysis suggests that dichotomies are losing their validity, among others, presence and absence, physical and computer-generated, or real and simulated. Thus, the algorithmically generated, well, we can say that the algorithmically generated increasingly dominates our reality. It intertwines the physical with the virtual and skews the linearity of time. If it exists at all. This has extensive implications for the spatial aspects of the curation and mediation of visual arts, as well as their reception by a public whose affinity for technology is ever increasing. Under this condition, the museum transmogrifies into a hybrid entity whose geographical location is extended by various digital platforms. Instead of one there is an affluence of exhibition spaces, an extended but also porous system of multiple dimensions. I would like to introduce the first part of the title, which is a quote from Karen Barrett's Transmatter Realities and Queer Political Imaginings, which resonates quite well with different parts of the project, and this is why I brought it here, even though it might seem a bit far-fetched for the first sight. But to give a context to the short quote, I brought this paragraph here, which is about memory. Memory is a field of unfolded patterns of differentiating and tangling. Remembering is not a process of recollection or the reproduction of what was, of assembling and ordering events like puzzle pieces fit together by fixing where each has its place. Rather, it is a matter of remembering, of tracing entanglement, responding to yearnings for connection materialized into fields of longing, belonging, of regenerating what never was but might yet have been. This article is dedicated to rememberings, to reconfiguring new seemingly disparate parts. And actually the article is about much more than that, and much more than memory. It offers an oblique reading of quantum physics and its reception. The author talks about lightnings, electrons, frogs, the Frankenstein monster, virtual particles, and regeneration. Latter two are the most important in this context. Because in the framework of Beyond Matter, we produced computer-generated or virtual spaces, including ones that repeat certain features of our physical surroundings, but we didn't intend to remake them, rather to model them. So this is true for the models of the past landmark exhibitions I will introduce later. Especially in case of the exhibition models, the relationship between a digital environment and the physical space after which it was generated is not that of the real and its copy, the original and its reproduction, the image and its likeness. Instead, virtual models enable revision as well as reinterpretation of the physical assemblages of objects to which they refer. And from the same article, I brought another quote on the virtual. It's an article of many things, so it's really broad scope of different topics, and she also writes about the virtual, which she defines not as a set of individual possibilities, one of which might yet be realized or actualized. Virtual possibilities are not what is absent relative to the real's presence. They are not the roads not taken or some yet unrealized potential future, the other to actual lived reality. The virtual is a superposition of impossibilities, energetic throbs of the nothingness, material forces of creativity and generativity. Virtual possibilities are material explorations that are integral to what matter is. On this basis, I would suggest that instantiations of wording can be understood as quantum phenomena that negate the binary opposition between the virtual and real, or between the artificial and natural, and we will see whether you agree. And I would like to start with the mentioned exhibition Spatial Affairs and its digital extension or virtual extension Spatial Affairs wording. Spatial Affairs from the beginning on was a hybrid exhibition that consisted of a physical exhibition and its online extension. So in order to explore the virtual condition, the notion of space had to be first looked at with thought, and therefore we posed the question, how was the notion of space being influenced by computation? And put together the Spatial Affairs exhibition, which was to analyze the relationship and mutual dependence of physical and digital presence through works of conceptual and contemporary art, as well as manifestos. The presented positions from before and after the emergence of computer technology share a common trait that regardless of their medium, they all examine the development and social impact of science and technology through the notion of space, thereby pointing out the codependency between the tangible real and the intangible digital. As early as the 70s, the pioneers of computer art had already demonstrated that the computer was capable of creating and representing artificial spaces. Take the works of Hiroshi Kawano or Georg Nies, for instance, supplanting early descriptive practices. The focus of contemporary artists has shifted from formalism towards critical approaches. An example for that from the exhibition was Information Skies, a piece of digital video by Meta Haven Collective, who visualizes the ubiquity of networked social spaces and the epistemological complications they generate, as well as the condition arising in the wake of fake news. It's an earlier video already. It's from 2015. The impact of information technology and science on the notion of space and visual arts had inspired many authors to write manifestos and create new types of artworks way before the spread of computers. Key examples include the 1936 Dimensionist Manifesto by Károly Tampó Sirato, or Lucio Fontana environments from the 40s and 50s. And here we can see the photogrammetric model of the exhibition and a few exhibition views with the artworks Gegebenenfalls die Wirklichkeit by Alicia Quade and the Infinite End of Franz Kafka's Das Schloss by Carola Bonfili, which was a video VR installation and model in one. And with this, we arrive to Spatial Affairs wording. A tér világlása, which is the Hungarian part of the title, is more or less the translation of it. There is also a QR code, so if you would like to delve into spatial affairs wording, you can just do it on your phone. I thought it's easier if I let you do that than navigating while talking. So, conceived as part of the exhibition Spatial Affairs, presented at the Ludwig Museum Budapest, Spatial Affairs Wording is an exploratory online environment, a virtual multi-user exhibition populated by crawling artworks, where visitors' avatars coexist with moving bodies of internet art and browser-based projects. It was designed by the post-critical studio De Rodina, and it is inspired by Konrad Zuse's theory of calculating space, describing a universe that consists of an abundance of living and evolving automata of discrete computational systems composed of cells that add up to a large self-reproducing cellular automaton. So the artworks and visitors that inhabit the virtual world of the exhibition are computational, biological and geological bodies without organs, as De Rodina has formulated, and the walls and floors are technical beings. Everyone and everything is sculpted from the same digital tissue. On the other hand, this environment can be seen as a digital deconstruction of the white cube. It is completely the opposite of it, since the artworks have their own avatars and they are also crawling around in the exhibition space. So practically, while visiting the exhibition, one has to go after them and catch them. They don't wait at their position that is being defined by the curator, but move around. And so on this slide, I'm showing the guide avatar that was also programmed for the space, and also a little stage that was created for accompanying programs that happened throughout the exhibition, which is still on view by the end of July. And spatial affairs wording and also the digital model of spatial affairs, the physical exhibition, are available on the so-called View platform of the Beyond Matter project, which is in the meantime an entire planetary system of different words, of different exhibitions that were created throughout the Beyond Matter project. And here I would like to go and visit another planet. Actually, two more planets, if we have the time. How much time is that? Okay. So, two other planets that are based on the mentioned past exhibitions, Iconoclash and Les Immatériaux. Well, it was a unique endeavor to base these so to create models of past exhibitions. So we thought that we would need to ask the curators who were still around at the time to give us advice. How would they see, how would they imagine a digital model of the exhibition they curated? And they gave a few hints, but they were not very comprehensive, I have to say. So we had to do quite a lot after that, and that happened with Les Immatériaux as well. In that case, the curators couldn't be asked anymore, unfortunately, but scholars who, for example, here we see on the screen Francesca Gallo and Andreas Bröckmann, who've been extensively researching the exhibition, and Andreas Bröckmann also participated in the archival process and supported the Centre Pompidou team in the creation of the model. And this is how it looks like now, after years of gathering data, digitizing archival material, translating quite a lot that was only available in French, in order to pack it into this digital model of les matériaux that you can also reach via this QR code. So just to say a few words about les matériaux, because it's an exhibition that is quite a long time ago. So it was curated by the French philosopher Jean-François Lyotard and the design theorist Thierry Chaput, in consultation with a team of project managers and scientific advisors. It was organized by the Center for Industrial Creation at the Centre Pompidou and exhibited there in '85. Engaging with the term immaterial, the exhibition questioned the impact of the dematerialization of information on everyday life, the arts and science. Exploring the intersection of art, science and technology, this manifestation, as the curators called it, put Lyotard's concepts into practice. It examined the transition from the modern to the postmodern era, when new technologies were profoundly changing humans' relationship to the world. Eschewing a narrative-driven, sequential spatial arrangement, Les Matériaux proposed an alternative approach to knowledge transfer that was diametrically opposed to that of the words faire or exposition universelle internationale. According to Lyotard, insecurity, loss of identity, and crisis are being experienced not only in the economic and social domains, but also in those of human sensibility, knowledge, powers, fertility, life, death, and ways of life, the relation to work, home, food, etc. End quote. In investigating this statement, the exhibition challenged conventional curatorial methods. The idea of the exhibition as a space for experimentation and questioning rather than a mere demonstration was fundamental to the curatorial process. I could say much more about the exhibition, but I would just like to show. So, the virtual exhibition model of Les Matériaux is very much based on the floor plan, what you can see on the upper left corner, and it unfolds in different layers. So there are archival photos that are involved, and there is a three-dimensional model that is based on this architecture, but it's not photorealistic at all, and in many cases when the archivists didn't know where a certain piece was, the pieces are there as ghosts, and they are blurred in a way, just to show that we are not completely sure about the whereabouts of that particular object in the exhibition scenography. And let me jump into the next example, the next experiment we made in the end. It's Iconoclash, jenseits der Bilderkriege, Wissenschaft, Religion und Kunst, beyond the image wars in science, religion and art. So it was curated by Bruno Latour and Peter Weibel in 2002 at the ZKM, the Center for Art and Media in Karlsruhe. This was their first collaboration at the ZKM and in general, which was followed by 3 other large-scale thematic exhibitions, the last one being Critical Zones. The curatorial team included the physicist and historian of science Peter Gallison, art historians Joseph Leo Kerner and Dario Gamboni, artist Adam Love, and curator Hans-Ulrich Obrist. A scientific advisory board of experts from art history, oriental studies, philosophy, media theory, musicology, and anthropology was consulted. Hans Belting, Marie-José Monzain, Heather Stoddard, Boris Groys, and Denis Laborde. Iconoclash was large-scale and focused on a crucial issue: representation in its various forms across disciplines and cultures, along with the turbulence it can spark. The exhibition was not intended to be itself iconoclastic, but to present a synopsis of scientific exhibits, documents, and artworks about iconoclasms, different types of them. It was a thought experiment, assuming the form of an exhibition, a so-called Gedankenausstellung, which became a genre that Peter Weibel and Bruno Latour defined later on. The term is a neologism, but I wouldn't go into further details. Here on the screen you can see two screenshots from the digital exhibition model with an art piece, and also on the second slide with the process that is being shown. The exhibition took place also outside of the ZKM, but I think I will skip it because we don't have much time. And this is what you see if you enter the digital model. And I will just explain how it works very, very briefly. So first of all, you will see these green halos around the artwork, and you will also notice that there's no exhibition space depicted around the artworks. So only the artworks with the temporary architecture are actually also moving around in the space. Since recommender algorithm is at work, and this recommender algorithm is reacting to the movement of the visitor. So as soon as I get close to an artwork that is tagged with different keywords, all the other artworks that are tagged with similar keywords are coming closer to me, and all the others drift apart. This is how we are creating with our own movement in the exhibition space, relational space that is ever changing and ever reshuffling. And based on this, we also put together a generic exhibition platform, which is a demonstration for how this whole system works. The code that the system is based on is published on the GitHub of the ZKM. So this is something that is open source, the backend and the front end as well. So if any of you would like to word your own words, then the software tool is out there and can be found online here. And just to close, I wanted to close with a quote by Mauro Martino from his text that is going to be published in the mentioned publication Beyond Matter Within Space, that summarizes the entire project, Generativism. In the forthcoming future, we shall undoubtedly behold increasingly potent diffusion models, observe the progressive disappearance of biases, and above all, experience the ever-growing ease of adapting models to our worldviews. It might be a bit of a techno-positivist approach to the current developments of generative AI, but let's hope that this is going to happen, and with the Beyond Matter project we try to contribute to this direction of development. Thank you very much for your time.
Vielen Dank für diese freundliche Einladung. Unfortunately, my school German is a bit rusty, so I have to switch to English. I would like today to offer you some reflections to put on the table about the relationship between virtual reality and empathy, which is one of the strands of research that we are conducting in the framework of this ERC project. Jean Vanier, one of the pioneers of virtual reality, in one of his many, many definitions of what virtual reality is, the 51st definition, which is not the last one in the book, he says that it's a medium that can put you in someone else's shoes, hopefully a path to increased empathy. And being or putting oneself in the other's shoes is, let's say, the ordinary translation of empathy or Einfühlung. Another enthusiastic supporter of the idea that VR is a device, a technology which can promote empathy is Chris Milk. He moved from video clips, musical video clips, to VR works, and in his quite famous TED talk, he speaks of VR as a machine that makes us more human, a machine which is the ultimate empathy machine, pretty optimistic. He thinks that if you show critical situations, for example, in the humanitarian crisis all over the planet, to the powerful people who are in charge of determining the policies in humanitarian crisis, for example, at the World Economic Forum in Davos, you can change their mind by putting on their heads a VR headset and teleporting them to critical situations. This idea was embraced by famous film directors, artists as well. For example, Catherine Bigelow. I have the videos here, but perhaps I can go quickly and then we can go back if you want during the discussion. She realized a VR documentary devoted to the rangers in a park in the Democratic Republic of Congo, trying to fight against people who kill elephants in order to get ivory illegally. Elephants again in Ai Weiwei Omni. It's a VR diptych showing how both elephants and human beings are exploited in their activities and their life and their existence. Chris Milk, with collaborators, he realized a series of documentaries in VR for the United Nations. This Klaus over Sidra brings us to a refugee camp in Jordan, and Sidra is a Syrian girl who escaped from, I cannot see the cursor here but I can, yeah. You have heard the voice of Sidra, you are there with her, she explains how is it like to live in a refugee camp, to go to school there, to play with her friends, to be with her family. Perhaps the most famous, Alejandro Iñárritu with Carne y Arena. Carne y Arena is a complex assemblage of different segments, one of which is in virtual reality. You are in a room, you are barefoot, your feet are on the sand, and you are teleported to the desert at the border between Mexico and the US, and you find yourself for 6 minutes in the middle of a group of migrants who try to cross the border illegally, and then the police arrives, the helicopters, the dogs, and you are threatened with shotguns, and it's of course pretty intense. And Iñárritu, in some of the interviews he released about his project, he says this helps empathy. As an Italian citizen, when I saw this a couple of times at the Fondazione Prada in Milan, I have always wondered, what if Matteo Salvini had come with me? He would have empathized with the police guards and the border officers rather than with the migrants. So it is evidently a work which is oriented in order to get you to empathize with the migrant, but this is not, of course, obvious in itself. Another example, the Book of Distance. This is interesting because it's hybrid. It's partly archival documents, partly animation. It's a very sad story of Japanese people migrated from Japan to Canada, and then Second World War, their land, their houses, they are taken away from them and they are put into concentration camp. And this is a nephew of one of those protagonists of this dramatic experience, who tries through virtual reality to reconstruct the history of his family. And you can be there. Being there is one of the formulas which is always repeated, as you know, in order to stress this feeling of presence in the virtual environment. And you can help taking away the stones from the land, help collecting the strawberries when they are ready, and so on and so forth. So it's an interactive. All these are just few examples of what is frequently referred to as immersive journalism. There's a documentary part, there's a mockumentary part, kind of fictional documentary, perhaps animation is integrated. Of course, they all belong to the same genre, in spite of the fact that it depends on the technology that you are using. We always speak of virtual reality in the singular, but we should rather speak in the plural, virtual realities according to different technologies, because one thing is if these environments are built around a 3 degrees of freedom system, which allows you just to turn around your gaze 360, or 6 degrees of freedom, which allows you also to move in the space, like a spatial translation, and if they are, like in the case of the Book of Distance, also interactive, which is not the case, for example, of Carne y Arena, of Iñárritu's work, because in Carne y Arena, the subtitle is quite telling, because it's virtually present, because you feel you are there in the desert, but virtually invisible. Physically invisible, sorry, because they do not recognize you. There's no, as Hegel would put it, social recognition. So I have problems with this kind of immersive journalism if it is sold and if they want us to buy it as an empathy machine. Why? First reason, because it hides, it obliterates, it suppresses the camera's gaze, the camera gaze and the author gaze. The 360 ideology, the 360 camera, promises an infinite exploration of the space, which is not possible, of course, because when you are in your headset, your safety is at risk. And when you approached too closely to the wall, somebody in the Carne y Arena environment pulls you back in order not to allow you to crash against the wall. But in the headset you see an infinite space of the desert that you are supposedly able to explore. Actually, the 360 camera has been installed in a specific place, and it is not true that the infinite space is there for you to freely explore. But in my view, it's even more problematic the fact that in this kind of immersive journalism, empathetic journalism, Einfühlung-friendly journalism, the other is actually erased, is actually suppressed, because in our empathic relationship, in our social interactions, it's the dialogue what is most important. You expose yourself to the other exposes himself or herself to you. There is something which is unexpected. something pops up that you had not taken into consideration, and you constantly adjust and renegotiate your relationship with the other, which is not possible in the virtual environments for one simple reason, that they share what Roland Barthes told us about photography. Photography is something of the past. It's something which belongs to the past. Even if I take a selfie of myself now and I look immediately at the selfie, as young as I am in the selfie, I will be no more in the future, because it has been recorded. The grammatical tense of photography, but we could repeat it also for virtual reality, but we could repeat it also for cinema, but we could repeat it for any indexical picture. So picture which has been generated because a cause has produced an effect on a photosensible surface, analog or digital doesn't matter, is something of the past. Ça a été, as Roland Barthes put it. So for these reasons, I think that we should be careful in speaking of virtual reality as an ultimate empathy machine, not only because it's far too optimistic. I don't see around me radical changes in the policies of migrants, of humanitarian crisis in the Mediterranean. We have had in these recent days dramatic confirmation of this, in spite of the fact that these videos of the United Nations were shown to powerful people in Davos. But I am not that pessimistic, because I also think that there are bright sides to it. When VR picks up a very old challenge, there was one of the most famous articles in philosophy during the 20th century, in 1974, American philosopher Thomas Nagel asked, what is it like to be a bat? Can we experience in the first person, phenomenologically speaking, what it is like to be a bat, to live like a bat? And it's not sufficient if you hang yourself with the head down and the feet up. We do not possess sonar, we do not possess a system of echolocation. We can study it from a neurophysiological point of view, but we will never be able to understand what it is like for a bat to identify the prey or obstacles in the space, sending sounds and receiving them back in an acoustic feedback. No? So the answer of Nagel was definitely and absolutely negative. We will never be able to phenomenologically understand what it is like to be a bat. I think that, interestingly enough, zoology in the last 2 centuries has tried precisely the opposite. I am thinking, for example, of Jacob von Uexküll and his idea that every species is isolated in its own phenomenological bubble, but actually for his entire life he tried to peep in the bubble of the other species to understand how a dog perceives the world, how a fly perceives the world, how a tick, he was obsessed with these problematic insects. And I think that in a way VR environments pick up this challenge in a totally paradoxical way when they try, for example, in Notes on Blindness, to put you in the psychophysiological condition of a person who is becoming blind. John Hull, he was an Australian theologist who underwent this tragic experience of losing his sight, and he described it in notes. He recorded his voice, and then this recording became a film, and then it finally became a VR experience, which is very touching, and it's a way in which you are in the darkness, and you hear voices, and you understand how sound becomes so important when you are not able to see anymore, or you're just able to see only shadowy, bluish figures. Or, for example, Cosmos Within Us by Tupac Martyr. He tries to put ourselves in the shoes of a patient who is affected by the terrible Alzheimer's disease, what it is like to lose the memory and finally the personal identity. Blind people, people suffering from Alzheimer's, they are human beings belonging to the same species to which we belong. We are all suffering from disabilities in one way or the other, of course, but they are, so to say, subspecies, specifically structuring their human experience in a different way, and VR tries to, paradoxically again, because I am not blind, so I will never be able to, not only to be a bat, to understand what it is like to be a bat, but also to understand fully what it is like to be a blind person. Nevertheless, it's an attempt, asymptotically, as they say in mathematics, in geometry, ad infinitum, to approach this idea. And this also happens with animals, because flight simulators of bird flight, for example, this is me in Paris trying to be an eagle, which is quite embarrassing, but my narcissism couldn't impede me to show this performance. You are mounted on a kind of cross, and there's a fan simulating the wind, and unfortunately there is not the screen showing you what I was seeing, but I was meeting King Kong on the top of the Empire State Building. And this is, of course, pretty cyber sickness, because there's a conflict of your system. You know that you are there, but you also see that you are in another place. This is teleporting. This is bilocation. This is the miracle of the saints, secularized in digital technologies, which is another strand that I am trying to explore, namely the theological background of, let's think of the avatar, of the icon, of the immersion, baptism per immersion, for example. This is another example of a collective of artists in Berlin, the Constitute. They mounted two independent cameras on a virtual headset, on an Oculus, and they offer you the possibility of perceiving the world around you as if you were a chameleon or a pigeon. Animals which can operate with their eyes independently, the right one from the left one, which is something that a human being usually, even those who are affected by radical forms of strabism, they are not able to function with, you know, the pigeon looks with one eye at the ground looking for food, and with the other eye he scans the sky in order to see if an hawk or a falcon is coming down to eat him. And this is, again, it's not like you have become a chameleon, but it is also something in which your human vision is no longer the ordinary vision that you are accustomed to. It's a problematic in-between, a paradoxical in-between, because at the end of the day, it's always your human eyes which are looking at the world, human eyes of a person who is not blind, or which does not suffer from Alzheimer's. But I think that this paradoxical attempt is pretty interesting to explore and to study, because we are, after all, human beings, finite. We have a finitude, but we always try to go beyond that threshold. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the kind introduction, and thank you very much for the invitation. And also thank you to Lívia and Andrea for these very, very interesting talks. I'm happy to speak today about world building in virtual reality art. And I will introduce you two works more in depth. One of them is Home of the Brain by Monika Fleischmann and Wolfgang Strauss, one of the very first VR artworks ever developed in 1998 to 91. And a contemporary VR work, Aporia by Patricia Detmering from 1920-21, which you can also see today at the museum in Bochum. And well, it already becomes clear that VR art and with it the medium of VR already existed before the beginning of the new wave of VR, of the hype, which was started with the Oculus Kickstarter crowdfunding campaign in 2012. VR has been experimented with since the late 50s, and 30 years ago, that was the time when German Lanier and his company VPL Research made their expensive VR technology also available to the artists, such as Monika Fleischmann and Wolfgang Strauss, among others. Technically speaking, VR was very different back then. Today's handy, easy-to-use headsets that are light, where head tracking works well and that have a good resolution in the displays and that are available for a few $100 didn't exist 30 years ago. It was a time when there was just one computer per household and where the internet barely existed or was just launched. VR was created on rather room-sized computers. The headset had a value of $10,000. Also the data gloves, which you can also see here in the picture, so that a VR artwork back then could easily cost $1 million at that time. And the works were basically trapped on the big computers. You couldn't just plug in an USB stick and take it to another computer. And this is what makes the vast majority of them, of the artworks, not survive to this day. And they only exist as a documentation, like Home of the Brain. Today, I want to talk about world building in VR. World building is a process of constructing a coherent and complex world, originally an imaginary one, also often used for science fiction or fantasy writing. And today it is strongly associated with the creation of virtual worlds and also particularly with the world of the computer games. In VR, the point of view of the user is important. As in the real world, the users perceive the virtual world from their own perspective. They don't look at it like at a painting, but they stand in the middle of it and usually have the 6 degrees of freedom that Andrea just mentioned in a 360-degree space. So they can turn and move in all directions and also perceive the environment as a coherent space. And now I would like to introduce the artists and the artworks. Monika Fleischmann is a German research artist, digital media scientist, and curator of new media art. And Wolfgang Strauss is an architect, and they started to collaborate in 1987. They engage in immersive installations, VR and MR, combining real objects and virtual environments. Their works range from architecture and interior design with poetic and social designs that allows users to intuitively interact with the environment and the landscape. They have had numerous international exhibitions, and they are, for example, part of the collection of the ZKM in Karlsruhe. And Home of the Brain won the Golden Nika for interactive art at Ars Electronica in 1992. In Home of the Brain, users could dive into a surreal and mystical world reminiscent of Giorgio de Chirico, as the artist described it. In this world, by the means of the data gloves, the users can move around and interact with the different elements in real time. In their world, the artist created an agora, an ancient Greek square that served as the central place for communication for the society and a place to hold a philosophical debate. Here it is a virtual public space of exchange and discourse. In the agora, users encounter different colored zones and houses, each assigned to different contrasting and complementary media theories, and different discourses take place in them. It's about AI, about human-machine interaction, about the relationship between the real and the virtual, about the role of the viewer in interactive art. So basically, the users can enter the houses by the means of the movement with the data gloves, and then let the associated thinkers speak. Marvin Minsky is assigned the blue house of utopia, the sphere, the water. He was rather positive about technology and believed in AI for digital survival of humans after death. So he wanted to kind of recreate the human brain. And he said there's no difference between dream and reality. Joseph Weizenbaum is thought of antipody to Minsky, and he is associated here with the color green and the cube, the tree. And he says rather that intelligence cannot be synthesized. Willem Flusser is here associated with the pyramid and the color red. And his idea of the future is described as a telematic society without authorities, but a digital and networked communication structure, which is completely opaque and steers itself cybernetically. His quote, "Technology can only get better, but the human will probably get worse." His antipody is Paulo Virilio, who is assigned the color yellow and the house of a disaster. He sees humans as a victim of technologization, which he blames for our downfall also. So Home of the Brain, therefore, mirrors media theory around 1990, as Oliver Grau puts it. A very detailed chapter about the work and the installation can be found in his well-known book, Virtual Art from Illusion to Immersion. Well, and now we talk about Patricia Detmering. Patricia Detmering was born in the former GDR, and she studied fine arts at the Hofbega Dresden until 2015, and she graduated with honors. Today, she lives and works as a media artist in Berlin. Her work has been exhibited in the Denver Film Society, the Wrong Biennial in Tel Aviv, and in Germany, she has exhibited at the Kunsthaus Erfurt, the Kindle Center, the Haus am Lützeplatz, or the Atelier of Kreuzberg in Berlin. She received various scholarships, such as from the Leinemann Stiftung, Talentschmiede Dresden, or Kulturstiftung Dresden. With Aporia, the artist creates a world entirely from watercolors that she had painted herself, and she then scanned and animated them. In her virtual world, we, the viewers, sit on a stone and observe our surroundings. We are embedded in a landscape with mountains, trees, and the sea and the beach. And we see here the village and the factory. And in the work, we also observe the day and night cycle. And we encounter these people or human-like avatars who go to work and return home at night. In Patricia Detmering's world, we can only watch. We can't respond to the world with controllers or data gloves, but her world responds to us. The inhabitants react to us in different ways. To them, we are the foreign intruder to their world. In total, there are 60 individuals whose behavior has been programmed by with AI algorithms. The inhabitants can make decisions and actions independently, and their behavior is inspired by the book Crowds and Power by Elias Canetti. Well, one part of the crowd behaves narrow-mindedly, and they prefer building walls and follow strong principles of order. The other half is more tolerant and moves more freely. Therefore, the reaction of the inhabitants to the stranger, to us, may vary whoever uses the piece. Groups are formed and dispersed, and leaders are appointed and dismissed. The social dynamics that comes into play now becomes the central theme of this generative work. When we compare these two works in terms of world building, Home of the Brain takes further references of world building into account, like particularly the four-element theory. According to it, all beings and the entire cosmos consists of certain mixed ratios of the four basic elements: earth, water, air, and fire. Allegorical representations based on the four elements often occur in the history of art, or the quaternity of divine occurs in cultural historical contexts. And in Home of the Brain too, the artists combined four theories with four colors, with symbols, and with geometric forms. The artists thus tie in with topoi for world building, and through interaction, the user becomes an active part of the world. And Patricia Detmering's work also recalls a concept from the Renaissance painting, that of the world landscape in German Weltlandschaft. World landscape is a style of painting founded at the beginning of the 16th century by Joachim Patinier. An artist composes an ideal landscape from various elements: mountains, seas, rivers, forests, etc., and usually also includes different scenes that simultaneously showing events that actually took place one after the other. And yeah, the world landscape was tied to biblical and mythological topics back then, but developed over the centuries to profound representation and pure landscape painting. The viewers sit on a stone in the middle of Patricia's world landscape in the VR experience. So in the VR experience, you really sit on eye level with the inhabitants. Patricia also includes a very observing precision on a stone in her physical installation here at the exhibition Resonant Realities in Berlin 2021. And here you can see that the outside perspective, which is also which is a big screen showing a generative version in real time of the inside perspective, where you here in fact take on the overview perspective, just as like you would, for example, stand in front of a painting or a landscape painting. Monica's and Wolfgang's work is not generative as Patricia's work is, because it was technically difficult to implement that at the time. But even though it is prefabricated, there is no linear narrative. You have the possibilities of action. You can go to different places. The work features the 6 degrees of freedom, whereas in aporia, you can look in all directions, which are 3 degrees of freedom. But both are important features of world building. And real-time interaction with other visitors to the world does not occur in either of these two virtual worlds. These works are not multiplayer works, which would be today technically possible, but much more expensive to build. For Patricia's work Aporia, both the observing position and the kind of loneliness as an intruder to the world are conceptual decisions. And I recommend you to see Patricia's work on site in Bochum. And if you don't have the chance, you can find the documentation of Home of the Brain, of course, on the artist's website, but also on our website, radiancevr.co, where we have a section about VR art in the 80s and 90s. And you can find a 360 video version of Aporia on our Radiance VR app for MetaQuest headsets. You can go to our website and download the app and install it on your Quest headset at home to access the work. Yeah, and now as a conclusion, I would like to point out again that VR art is already 30 years old, and that VR as a medium, like any other medium, serves not only to discuss the conditions of a medium, but also to create an artistic statement or reflection, of course. And art has always been about illusion and immersion, paintings offer the illusion of a 3D world on a 2D surface. And art is about involving the viewer in what is happening in the image. In VR, the viewer is not standing in front of the image, but right in the middle of it and perceives it from his own or her own point of view. In my opinion, VR will become a medium that we will use in our everyday life for many different purposes in the future, or we could even, or we do even today. And art on the headset can then take place at home. It does not have to be only in the museum. And so perhaps also for art will no longer be perceived as elitist by many groups in our society, but more as something that is made by the people, for the people. Thank you.